The October rain hammered against the windows of St. Mary's Church in suburban Denver, Colorado, as if the sky itself mourned the loss of Robert Martinez. Mariana sat in the front pew, her black dress damp from the short walk from the parking lot, watching the steady stream of mourners who had come to pay their respects to her father. At 28, she had prepared herself for this day for months, watching her father's battle with cancer. But nothing could have prepared her for what would happen after they lowered his casket into the ground. Her stepmother, Patricia, sat rigidly beside her, dabbing at perfectly dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. Patricia's 3 children from her previous marriage, Derek, 25, Vanessa, 23, and Kyle, 21, occupied the rest of the front row, their expressions ranging from bored to impatient. Mariana noticed how they kept checking their phones, even during the eulogy. Robert Martinez was a man who believed in family above all else. Father Thompson's voice echoed through the church. He worked tirelessly to provide for those he loved, building not just a successful contracting business, but a home filled with warmth and dedication. Mariana's throat tightened as memories flooded back, her father teaching her to use power tools in his workshop when she was 12. The pride in his eyes when she graduated summa cum laude from the University of Colorado with her business degree. The way he'd insisted on walking her down the aisle at her wedding 3 years ago, even though the chemotherapy had left him weak and thin. After the divorce from her ex-husband Marcus last year, her father had been her rock. "Mija," he'd said, using the Spanish endearment that always made her feel safe. "You come home whenever you need to. This house is yours as much as it's mine. More even. You're my blood, my legacy." The reception at the house afterward felt surreal. Their family home on Maple Street, a beautiful 2-story colonial that her father had renovated himself, buzzed with activity. The kitchen overflowed with casseroles and condolence cards, while Patricia played the grieving widow with theatrical precision. Mariana moved through the rooms mechanically, accepting hugs and condolences, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She caught Derek and Kyle whispering in the corner of the living room, their eyes scanning the house with an almost calculating expression. Vanessa was taking photos of the furniture with her phone, claiming she was documenting memories. But Mariana noticed she was being particularly thorough with the antiques and artwork. "The reading of the will is scheduled for Thursday at 2 o'clock, Patricia announced to the family after the last guest had left. Her voice had lost its grieving tremor remarkably quickly. "I assume you'll be there, Mariana?" "Of course," Mariana replied, exhaustion weighing heavily on her shoulders. "Dad and I talked about his wishes many times." Derek laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the somber atmosphere. "Yeah, well, talking and legal documents are 2 different things, aren't they?" Mariana felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October weather. "What's that supposed to mean?" Nothing. Patricia interjected quickly, shooting Derek a warning look. "We're all just emotional right now. Why don't you head home, dear? You look exhausted." But Mariana didn't have a home to go to. She'd been staying in her childhood bedroom since the divorce, helping care for her father during his final months. This house was her home, had been for 28 years. "I think I'll stay here tonight," she said, "in my old room." The look that passed between Patricia and her children was swift, but Mariana caught it. Cold. Calculating. Triumphant. "Actually," Patricia said, her voice taking on a harder edge, "I think it would be better if you stayed elsewhere for a while. We need time to process our grief as a family." "I am family," Mariana said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Stepdaughter," Vanessa corrected with a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes. "There's a difference." The next morning, Mariana drove to her friend Jessica's apartment across town, a bag of essentials thrown hastily together. Jessica, her college roommate and current paralegal at a downtown law firm, took one look at her face and poured 2 cups of coffee without asking. "They kicked you out of your own house?" Jessica's voice rose an octave. It's not legally my house, Mariana said, staring into her coffee. Not yet, anyway. The will reading is Thursday. But your dad always said... I know what he said, but what if he never made it official? What if Patricia convinced him to change things? The doubt that had been gnawing at her since yesterday grew stronger. They've been married for 8 years. Legally, she has more claim than I do. Jessica set down her mug with a sharp clink. Your father was a smart man, Mari. He built a $1 million construction business from nothing. You really think he'd leave his only daughter out in the cold? But Mariana couldn't shake her unease. She'd seen too much in her brief marriage to Marcus. How quickly love could turn to calculation, how legal documents could become weapons. Her father had been sick for so long, and Patricia had been his primary caregiver, his constant companion. What if she'd used that time to secure her own interests? Wednesday evening, Mariana drove past the house, a masochistic impulse she couldn't resist. What she saw made her slam on the brakes so hard that the car behind her honked angrily. A U-Haul truck sat in the driveway. Derek and Kyle were loading furniture, her father's antique desk from his study, the dining room set that had belonged to her grandmother, boxes and boxes of items she couldn't identify from the street. She pulled over and dialed Patricia's number with shaking fingers. Hello, Mariana. Patricia's voice was cool, professional. What's going on at the house? Why is there a moving truck? Oh, that. We're just storing some things. The house is so full of memories, you understand. We need space to breathe. Those are my father's things. My grandmother's things. Were, dear, were your father's things. And as for your grandmother's furniture, well, I'm sure we can work something out after the will reading tomorrow. The line went dead. Mariana sat in her car, watching her childhood being loaded into a truck, and felt something harden inside, her chest. Something that felt like her father's stubbornness, his quiet strength. Thursday arrived gray and drizzling, Denver's autumn sky matching Mariana's mood. The law office of Henderson, Burke & Associates occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the Rocky Mountains that her father had always loved. Patricia arrived with her children in tow, all dressed in black, all wearing expressions of barely concealed anticipation. Derek had traded his usual jeans and t-shirt for a suit that looked expensive and new. Vanessa clutched a designer purse, her nails freshly manicured. Even Kyle, usually the sloppiest of the three, looked put together. They looked like people, dressed for a windfall, not a funeral. Richard Henderson, her father's longtime attorney, was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a steady demeanor that had always made Mariana feel safe. He'd handled her parents' divorce years ago, her father's business contracts, and had been a family friend for over 2 decades. Please, everyone, have a seat, he said, gesturing to the chairs arranged in front of his mahogany desk. Patricia immediately claimed the chair closest to the desk, her children flanking her like bodyguards. Mariana sat across from them, suddenly feeling very alone. Before we begin, Henderson said, pulling on his reading glasses, I want to express my condolences to all of you. Robert was not just a client, but a good friend. He was very clear about his intentions regarding his estate, and he took great care to ensure everything was properly documented. Patricia's smile was razor sharp. I'm sure he did. He was always so thoughtful. Henderson opened the thick folder in front of him. The will was last updated 18 months ago, and Robert was very specific about his wishes. I'll read the relevant portions. Mariana's heart hammered as Henderson cleared his throat and began to read in his measured, professional tone. To my wife, Patricia Elena Martinez, I leave my gratitude for her care during my illness and the sum of $50,000 to be paid from my life insurance policy. I also leave her the 2019 Honda Accord and all jewelry I purchased for her during our marriage. Patricia's face went white. $50,000? That's it? Henderson continued, reading as if she hadn't spoken. To Derek James Patterson, Vanessa Marie Patterson, and Kyle David Patterson, I leave the sum of $10,000 each, also to be paid from my life insurance policy. Derek shot to his feet. Are you kidding me? 10 grand? After 8 years of putting up with his— Derek! Patricia hissed, but her own composure was cracking. The remainder of my estate, Henderson continued, his voice growing stronger, including my business, Martinez Construction LLC, all bank accounts, investment portfolios, and the family home located at 1247 Maple Street, Denver, Colorado, I leave to my daughter, Mariana Elena Martinez, who has been the light of my life, and the keeper of our family's true values. The silence that followed was deafening. Mariana felt as if the world had tilted on its axis. Relief, validation, and grief crashed over her in waves. Patricia found her voice first. That's impossible. He wouldn't— We're married. I have rights. Henderson's expression remained neutral. Colorado is not a community property state, Mrs. Martinez. Your husband was free to distribute his assets as he saw fit, and he made his wishes very clear. Vanessa's voice was shrill. This is wrong. We lived in that house. We're his family too. You lived in that house for 8 years, Henderson replied calmly. Mariana lived there for 28. And according to the will, Robert considered her his sole heir and the rightful keeper of the family legacy. Derek paced behind his mother's chair like a caged animal. There has to be something we can do. Contest it. Claim undue influence. Something. Henderson removed his glasses and fixed Derek with a steady stare. I would strongly advise against that course of action. Robert was of sound mind when he made these decisions, and I have extensive documentation to prove it. Furthermore, any contest would be expensive and, given the clear language of the will and Robert's careful documentation of his reasoning, ultimately unsuccessful. Patricia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This isn't over. That girl manipulated him, played on his emotions. Mrs. Martinez. Henderson's voice cut through her accusations like a blade. I would be very careful about making unsubstantiated claims. Mariana is now a woman of considerable means, and defamation lawsuits are expensive. Mariana finally found her voice. I never manipulated anyone. I loved my father and I took care of him. Took care of him? Vanessa laughed bitterly. You moved back home because your marriage fell apart. You were using him. The accusation hit Mariana like a physical blow, but before she could respond, Henderson intervened. I think this meeting has run its course. Mariana, I'll need to schedule some time with you this week to go over the business transfers and property details. Mrs. Martinez, you have 30 days to vacate the property, as specified in the will. Patricia's face flushed red. 30 days? Where are we supposed to go? That's not Mariana's concern, Henderson replied, though I'm sure she'll be reasonable about the timeline if you approach her with respect. But as the Patterson family filed out of the office, their faces twisted with rage and humiliation, Mariana doubted that respect was on their agenda. She was right. That evening, she drove to Maple Street with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The house looked different, somehow, though she couldn't put her finger on what had changed. The landscaping her father had been so proud of looked neglected, and there were scuff marks on the front porch that hadn't been there before. She walked up the front steps, key in hand, and tried to fit it into the lock. Nothing. She tried again, thinking maybe the October cold had warped the metal somehow. Still nothing. A horrible realization crept over her as she examined the lock more closely. It was different. New. The brass was shinier, and the shape was completely different from the one her father had installed 2 years ago. They had changed the locks. She walked around to the back door, hoping against hope, but found the same thing. New locks, different from the ones she'd used her entire life. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. The will might say the house is yours, but possession is 9/10 of the law. Try to evict us and we'll make your life hell. We know people. We know your secrets. Back off if you know what's good for you. Mariana stared at the message, her hands shaking with rage. They had locked her out of her own house, her childhood home, the place where her father's workshop still smelled like sawdust and motor oil, where her mother's rose garden bloomed every spring, where every room held 28 years of memories. She tried calling Patricia, but the call went straight to voicemail. Same with Derek, Vanessa, and Kyle. Standing in the backyard where she'd learned to ride a bike, where her father had taught her to change a tire, where she'd had her first kiss at 16, Mariana felt something fundamental shift inside her. They wanted a fight? They were about to learn exactly what Robert Martinez had taught his daughter about fighting for what was rightfully hers. Friday morning found Mariana back in Richard Henderson's office, but this time she wasn't the grieving daughter, seeking comfort. She was a woman who owned $1 million construction business and a house being illegally occupied, and she was ready to act like it. They changed the locks, she said, without preamble as she settled into the chair across from his desk. Henderson's eyebrows rose. Already? The will was just read yesterday. And they sent me this. She showed him the threatening text message. Henderson's expression darkened as he read. This is witness intimidation and possibly extortion. Have you contacted the police? That's my next stop. But I wanted to talk to you first about the business side. How quickly can we make the transfer of assets official? The house and bank accounts can be transferred immediately. I just need your signature on several documents. The business transfer is slightly more complex because of licensing and insurance requirements, but we can have you officially in control within a week. Mariana leaned forward. And what about the illegal occupation of my property? Technically, they're squatters now. You can file for an emergency eviction order, but that could take several days to process. However, Henderson's lips curved into what might have been a smile. There are other approaches, such as, your father's construction business has contracts with several utility companies in Denver. Martinez Construction has done electrical work for Xcel Energy, plumbing contracts, with Denver Water and heating system installations for several major HVAC companies. Mariana began to see where this was going. Go on. As the new owner of Martinez Construction, you would have certain professional relationships and knowledge about how utility systems work, wouldn't you? I would indeed, Mariana said, her father's lessons about leverage and strategic thinking coming back to her. And if there were, say, concerns about the safety or legality of utility connections at a particular property, well, that would require immediate investigation by the appropriate authorities, Henderson finished. Purely for safety reasons, of course. Their eyes met across the desk, and Mariana felt a surge of the same satisfaction she used to feel when she and her father worked out complex construction problems together. Let's make those transfers official, she said. 2 hours and a dozen signatures later, Mariana Elena Martinez was officially the owner of Martinez Construction LLC, 3 bank accounts totaling $1.2 million, an investment portfolio worth another $800,000, and a house at 1247 Maple Street that she couldn't legally enter. Her next stop was the Denver Police Department's District 3 station, where she met with Detective Sarah Walsh, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who looked like she'd seen every kind of family drama imaginable. So they locked you out of your own house and sent threatening messages, Detective Walsh summarized after reviewing Mariana's documentation. And you want to file a report. I want to establish a paper trail, Mariana clarified. I have a feeling. This is going to get uglier before it gets better, Detective Walsh nodded approvingly. Smart thinking. We can't arrest them just for changing locks. Technically, they were residents until yesterday. But the threatening message is concerning. I'll file a report and start a case file. If they escalate their behavior, we'll have documentation. She handed Mariana a case number and her business card. Call me if anything else happens. And be careful. Family disputes over money can turn nasty fast. From the police station, Mariana drove to her father's, now her, business office. Martinez Construction occupied a modest but well-maintained building on the outskirts of downtown Denver, its parking lot filled with trucks, equipment trailers, and the organized chaos of a successful contracting operation. Carlos Mendoza, her father's foreman and closest friend for 15 years, was waiting for her in the office. A stocky man with graying hair and hands scarred by decades of construction work, Carlos had been like an uncle to Mariana growing up. "Mija," he said, embracing her tightly. "I heard about the will. Your papa, he did right by you." "Carlos, I need your help with something," Mariana said, settling into her father's chair behind the big oak desk. "Patricia and her kids have locked me out of the house." Carlos's expression hardened. "Cabron," he muttered. "After everything your papa did for them. I need to get them out, but I want to do it legally, smartly, the way Dad would have done. What do you need?" Mariana pulled out a legal pad and began sketching a plan that would have made her father proud. "First, I need you to pull all the utility records for the house. Every electrical permit, plumbing inspection, heating system maintenance record we have on file. See, I can do that. But why? Because I need to know exactly what systems we've worked on over the years. And then I need you to call your contacts at the city inspector's office and the utility companies." Understanding dawned in Carlos's eyes. "Ah, I see. Safety inspections." "Purely routine," Mariana agreed. "After all, there's been a change in ownership, and we want to make sure everything is up to code, especially in a house where unauthorized occupants might not understand the importance of proper maintenance." Carlos grinned. "Your papa, he taught you well." They spent the next hour going through files, and what they found was better than Mariana had hoped. Over the past 8 years, Martinez Construction had done extensive work on the house. A complete electrical upgrade, new plumbing for the master, bathroom, installation of a new high-efficiency furnace, and a full renovation of the basement that included new wiring and waterproofing. Every bit of this work was permitted and inspected, Carlos said, spreading the documents across the desk. But permits require re-inspection if there's been any modification or if there are concerns about safety. And if unauthorized work has been done without permits, the city can order immediate evacuation until everything is brought up to code. Carlos finished. Mariana's phone rang. Jessica's name appeared on the screen. "Mari, you need to see the news," Jessica said without preamble. "Channel 7, now." Mariana grabbed the office remote and turned on the small TV mounted in the corner. A perfectly coiffed reporter stood in front of her house, with a sympathetic expression. "This is a heartbreaking story of family betrayal here in Denver," the reporter was saying. "Patricia Martinez, widow of local contractor Robert Martinez, claims she and her 3 children are being evicted from their family home by her stepdaughter, who allegedly manipulated the grieving widower into changing his will." The camera cut to Patricia, who had somehow managed to make herself look frail and victimized despite being a healthy 52-year-old woman. "Mariana moved back home when her marriage failed," Patricia said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Robert felt sorry for her, and she took advantage of his kindness. Now she wants to throw us out on the street just days after we buried the man we all loved." Mariana felt sick. The reporter was eating it up, nodding sympathetically as Patricia painted herself as the victim and Mariana as a manipulative gold digger. "We've reached out to Mariana Martinez for comment," the reporter continued, "but she has not responded to our requests." The segment ended with a shot of the house and a promise to follow this developing story. "Maldita sea," Carlos swore. "They're making you look like the villain." Mariana's phone was already buzzing with calls from numbers she didn't recognize, probably reporters. "Let them," she said, surprising herself with how calm she sounded. Dad always said the best response to lies is the truth, and the truth has a way of coming out. She turned to Carlos. How quickly can you arrange those inspections? I can have someone out there Monday morning. Do it. And Carlos, make sure they're thorough. That evening, Mariana sat in Jessica's apartment, fielding calls from reporters and trying to ignore the sick feeling in her stomach every time she thought about how Patricia was manipulating the narrative. Her phone buzzed with another unknown number. Mariana Martinez? The voice was crisp, professional. This is she. My name is Amanda Chen, and I'm a reporter with Channel 9 News. I've been covering the story about your family's dispute, and I'd like to get your side of things. I'm not interested in talking to the press right now. I understand, but I think you should know that Patricia Martinez has scheduled a press conference for tomorrow morning. She's claiming you're trying to steal your stepfamily's home and that your father wasn't mentally competent when he made his will. Mariana closed her eyes. Of course Patricia would escalate. Of course she would try to destroy Mariana's reputation to get what she wanted. Ms. Martinez, are you there? I'm here. What exactly is she planning to say? According to her publicist, she has a publicist? She hired one this afternoon. According to the press release, she's going to claim that you isolated your father from his family during his illness and manipulated him into changing his will. She's also planning to announce that they're filing a lawsuit to contest the will and have you removed from the house. Mariana felt something cold and determined settle in her chest. What time is this press conference? 10 a.m. tomorrow, in front of the house. Thank you for the heads up. Ms. Martinez, would you be willing to give me an interview? I'd like to tell your side of the story. Mariana thought about her father, about his lessons on timing and strategy. Not yet, but I'll call you when I'm ready. After hanging up, she called Henderson. They're escalating, she told him. Press conference tomorrow, lawsuit threats, the whole 9 yards. I expected as much. Patricia Martinez strikes me as someone who doesn't take defeat gracefully. But Mariana, I need you to understand something. They can make your life difficult in the short term, but they cannot win. The will is ironclad. Your father was demonstrably competent, and you have done nothing wrong. It doesn't feel that way when I'm watching myself get dragged through the mud on the evening news. I know. But remember what your father always said. The best foundation is built on bedrock, not sand. Your position is bedrock. Theirs is sand. After ending the call, Mariana sat in Jessica's living room, staring out at the Denver skyline. Somewhere out there, Patricia and her children were sleeping in her house, convinced they had won the first round. They had no idea what was coming. Sunday morning, Mariana woke early and drove to Crown Hill Cemetery, where her father had been buried just 4 days ago. The headstone wasn't ready yet, but she found his grave easily. The flowers from the funeral were still fresh, though the Colorado wind had scattered some of the petals. She sat cross-legged on the grass, something she hadn't done since she was a child, and talked to him the way she used to when she had problems that seemed too big to solve. They think they can bulldoze right over me, Papa, she said softly. Patricia's got reporters believing I'm some kind of scheming gold digger, and they're planning to drag this whole thing through the courts. A hawk circled overhead, riding the mountain thermals, and Mariana remembered her father pointing out birds of prey when they worked on job sites together. You taught me that the best way to deal with bullies is to be smarter than they are, she continued. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be smart and patient and strategic, just like you taught me. She stood, brushing grass off her jeans, and made a silent promise to her father's memory. Patricia and her children wanted a war? They were about to discover that Robert Martinez had raised his daughter to be a worthy opponent. Monday morning at 8 a.m., Mariana was waiting in the parking lot of a coffee shop 3 blocks from Maple Street when her phone rang. Mariana, it's Carlos. The inspectors are at the house. All of them? See. Electrical, plumbing, heating, and building code. They're being very thorough. Through the phone, Mariana could hear raised voices in the background. Is that Patricia I hear? She's not happy. She keeps demanding to know who called for the inspections, but they told her it's routine after a change of ownership, especially when there are questions about recent modifications. Recent modifications? Carlos's voice took on a grim satisfaction. It turns out someone did some electrical work in the basement without permits. Added some outlets, moved some wiring around. The electrical inspector is not pleased. Mariana felt a surge of vindication. How not pleased? Red tag not pleased. The power's being shut off until a licensed electrician can inspect and certify all the work. A red tag meant the electrical system was deemed unsafe for occupancy. No power meant no heat, no hot water, no refrigeration. How long will that take? Well, Martinez Construction could have someone out there this afternoon, Carlos said thoughtfully. But we're pretty busy this week. Might take us 4 or 5 days to fit it into the schedule. That seems reasonable, Mariana agreed. We wouldn't want to rush something as important as electrical safety. And the plumbing inspector found some concerns too. Looks like someone installed a new sink in the master bathroom without proper permits. Water's gotta be shut off until that's fixed. My, they've been quite busy, haven't they? See. Oh, and Mariana. Channel 9 is here. That reporter you talked to, Amanda Chen. She's interviewing the inspectors. Mariana smiled for the first time in days. I'll be right there. She arrived at Maple Street to find controlled chaos. 2 city inspection vehicles sat in the driveway, along with trucks from the electrical and water departments. Yellow caution tape stretched across the front porch, and a large red placard had been posted on the front door. Unsafe for occupancy. Do not enter. Patricia stood on the sidewalk in her bathrobe, her hair uncombed, screaming at anyone who would listen. Derek and Kyle were loading suitcases into their car with frantic urgency, while Vanessa filmed everything with her phone, probably for social media. Amanda Chen, a sharp-eyed Asian woman in her 30s, was interviewing the head electrical inspector, who was explaining in technical detail why the house was being deemed unsafe. The unauthorized electrical work poses a serious fire hazard, the inspector was saying. Whoever did this work used substandard materials and didn't follow proper code requirements. We had no choice but to red tag the property. Mariana approached Amanda Chen during a break in filming. Ms. Martinez, Amanda said, turning to her with interest. Perfect timing. Would you like to comment on this morning's developments? I'd like to say that I'm deeply concerned about these safety violations, Mariana said, choosing her words carefully. My father always insisted that any work done on our family home meet the highest safety standards. I'm grateful that the city inspectors are being so thorough in protecting public safety. Patricia Martinez claims you orchestrated these inspections to harass your stepfamily. Mariana's expression remained serene. The inspections were triggered automatically by the change in property ownership as required by city ordinance. I certainly didn't ask anyone to do unauthorized electrical or plumbing work. Behind her, Patricia's voice rose to a shriek. This is harassment. This is illegal. The electrical inspector, a patient man who'd clearly dealt with upset homeowners before, shook his head. Ma'am, this is standard procedure. The work was done without permits and doesn't meet code. The property cannot be occupied until these issues are resolved. How long will that take? Derek demanded. Depends on how quickly you can get a licensed contractor out here. Could be a few days, could be a few weeks, depending on their schedule, and what they find when they start digging into the work that was done. Patricia whirled around and spotted Mariana talking to the reporter, her face contorted with rage. You, she screamed, marching across the yard. You did this. You called them. Mariana remained calm as Patricia approached, very aware that the news cameras were rolling. I didn't call anyone, Patricia. I'm just grateful that safety violations were discovered before anyone got hurt. Don't give me that innocent act. You're trying to force us out. I'm trying to make sure no one gets electrocuted or hurt by substandard plumbing work, Mariana replied evenly. Who did the electrical work in the basement, Patricia? Because, whoever it was, they put everyone in this house at risk. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Behind her, Derek was shooting Kyle a warning look that the cameras definitely caught. The house will be safe to occupy once the repairs are made, Mariana continued. Of course, since you'll need to vacate anyway within the next 3 weeks per the terms of my father's will, this might actually be good timing. 3 weeks? Amanda Chen interjected. I thought the will gave them 30 days. It did, Mariana confirmed. But that was last Thursday. Today is Monday, so they have 25 days remaining. Patricia looked like she was about to have a stroke. You can't do this. We'll fight you. We'll sue. That's certainly your right, Mariana said. But I'd suggest focusing your energy on finding a place to stay while the safety repairs are being made. And next time, make sure any work done on the property is properly permitted. The inspector approached them. Excuse me, but I need everyone to clear the property. It's not safe for occupancy until the electrical and plumbing issues are resolved. Patricia looked around wildly, as if expecting someone to intervene on her behalf. But the inspectors were already packing up their equipment, and Derek and Kyle had finished loading their car. Where are we supposed to go? Vanessa wailed. There's a nice extended stay America about 10 minutes from here, Mariana suggested helpfully. Very reasonable rates for weekly stays. The look Patricia gave her could have melted steel, but there was nothing she could do. The city had spoken, and the house was officially uninhabitable. As the Patterson family drove away in their overladen cars, Mariana felt a deep satisfaction. Not revenge exactly, but justice. Her father had always said that the truth had a way of working itself out if you were patient and smart about it. Amanda Chen approached her as the crowd dispersed. That was quite a development, she said. Are you ready to give me that interview now? Mariana looked at her childhood home, wrapped in caution tape, but still standing strong, built on the solid foundation her father had always insisted upon. Yes, she said. I think I am. The interview with Amanda Chen took place Tuesday afternoon in Henderson's law office, with the Denver skyline providing a professional backdrop through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Mariana had spent Monday evening preparing, not by rehearsing talking points, but by gathering documents, photos, and evidence that would tell the real story of her relationship with her father and his decision to leave her the estate. Let's start with the basics, Amanda said, settling into her chair as the cameraman adjusted his equipment. Patricia Martinez claims you manipulated your father into changing his will. What's your response to that? Mariana opened the folder in front of her. My response is documented evidence. This is a copy of my father's will from 2019, 4 years and before he was diagnosed with cancer. Even then, he left the house and business to me. She handed Amanda a legal document, its pages slightly yellowed with age. This is his will from 2016, when he and Patricia had been married for 3 years. The provisions are identical: house and business to me, money to Patricia and her children. Amanda studied the documents. So the will didn't change after his cancer diagnosis? Not the major provisions. The only change he made was to increase the monetary gifts to Patricia and her children. In 2019, he left them $5,000 each. In the final version, he doubled Patricia's share to $50,000 and gave the children $10,000 each. So he actually became more generous to them, not less? Exactly. If I were manipulating him, wouldn't I have tried to cut them out entirely? Mariana pulled out another document. This is a letter my father wrote to his attorney in 2023, 6 months after his diagnosis. Would you like me to read the relevant portion? Amanda nodded, and Mariana began reading in a steady voice. I want to make sure my wishes are crystal clear regarding my estate. Mariana is my blood, my legacy, and the only person who has ever put my interests above her own. Patricia is a good woman who has cared for me during my illness, and I want to provide for her, but she has her own children and her own life. Mariana sacrificed her marriage to help care for me, and she deserves the security of the family business and home. She is the only one I trust to preserve what I've built and honor the Martinez family name." The camera captured every word, and Mariana could see the shift in Amanda's expression as the narrative Patricia had constructed began to crumble. "That's quite different from the story Patricia told," Amanda observed. "My father was many things, but he wasn't a man who could be manipulated. He built $1 million business from nothing. He survived a bitter divorce from my mother, raised me as a single father for 10 years, and then blended his family when he married Patricia. He knew exactly what he was doing." Mariana pulled out her phone and showed Amanda a photo. "This was taken 3 weeks before he died. We were in his workshop, and he was teaching me how to repair a vintage drill press. Does this look like a man being manipulated by his daughter?" The photo showed Robert Martinez, thin from chemotherapy but with bright, alert eyes, standing next to Mariana as she worked on the machine. Their identical expressions of concentration made their relationship unmistakable. "He looks very present, very engaged," Amanda said, "because he was, right up until the end." Mariana's voice caught slightly. "The night before he died, he told me he was proud of the woman I'd become, and that he knew I'd take care of everything he'd built. That wasn't manipulation. That was a father's love." "Let's talk about the electrical and plumbing violations at the house. Patricia claims you orchestrated the inspections to force them out." Mariana's expression hardened. "Patricia claims a lot of things that aren't true. The inspections were triggered automatically by the change in property ownership, but I am concerned about what they found." She pulled out a folder thick with permits and inspection reports. "These are the records for all the work Martinez Construction performed on the house over the years. Every single project was properly permitted and inspected. The electrical work in the basement that was red tagged, that wasn't done by us. Who did do it? I have my suspicions, but I don't want to make accusations without proof. What I can say is that Kyle Patterson posted several videos on his Instagram account last year showing him doing electrical work in our basement, videos that have mysteriously disappeared since the inspection." Amanda leaned forward. "You're saying he did unpermitted electrical work?" "I'm saying someone did, and it was done after my father became too sick to supervise what was happening in his own house. The work was sloppy, dangerous, and violated multiple building codes." "That's a serious accusation. It's a serious safety violation. If that work had caused a fire, people could have died, including my father." The interview continued for another 30 minutes, with Mariana methodically dismantling every claim Patricia had made. She showed Amanda copies of the bank statements proving that Patricia had been taking money from her father's accounts without permission. She provided documentation of the furniture and valuables that had been removed from the house before the will reading. She even had photos from Derek's social media showing him and his siblings celebrating at an expensive restaurant the night after the funeral. "One final question," Amanda said as they wrapped up. "What do you want people to know about this situation?" Mariana thought about her father, about the lessons he'd taught her, about the legacy he'd entrusted to her care. "I want people to know that my father was a good man who worked hard his entire life to build something meaningful. He wasn't a victim, and he wasn't manipulated. He made careful, considered decisions about his legacy, and he chose to entrust it to the person he knew would honor it. I intend to do exactly that." The interview aired Wednesday evening, and the response was immediate and dramatic. Within hours, social media was buzzing with support for Mariana and outrage at Patricia's deception. The Instagram videos that Kyle had deleted, several people had screenshots, and they quickly went viral. By Thursday morning, 3 different news outlets had picked up the story, and the narrative had completely flipped. Patricia Martinez wasn't a grieving widow being victimized by her stepdaughter. She was a woman who had tried to steal a family's legacy and had been caught red-handed. Mariana's phone was buzzing constantly, but now the calls were supportive. Former clients of Martinez Construction called to express their condolences and support. Her father's friends reached out to share their own stories of how Robert had talked about his pride in his daughter. But the best call came Thursday afternoon, from Detective Walsh. "Ms. Martinez, I think you need to know that Patricia Martinez filed a police report yesterday claiming you were harassing her family." "What kind of harassment?" "She claimed you were following them, making threatening phone calls, and paying people to intimidate them. The problem is, she provided no evidence, and when we checked her phone records, there were no calls from your number or any numbers associated with you." "So she lied to the police?" "It appears so. But here's the interesting part. When we interviewed her about the allegations, she let slip some information about moving your father's belongings before the will reading. That's potentially theft, and it gave us grounds to get a warrant for the storage unit where they moved everything." Mariana felt a surge of hope. "What did you find?" "Let's just say your father's antique desk, your grandmother's dining room set, and about $50,000 worth of other items are now in police custody as evidence. We also found something else interesting." "What?" "A handwritten document, dated 2 weeks before your father's death. It appears to be an attempted will that leaves everything to Patricia, but it's not notarized, not witnessed, and not legally valid. However, it does show intent to defraud." Mariana sank into her chair. Patricia hadn't just been opportunistic. She'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. "What happens now?" "We're filing charges for theft and attempted fraud." "Patricia and her children are going to have much bigger problems than finding a place to live." After hanging up, Mariana called Carlos. "The police found the furniture," she told him, "and evidence that Patricia was planning to steal the inheritance." "Dios mío," Carlos breathed. "Your papa, he knew, didn't he? That's why he was so careful with the will." "I think he suspected something, yes. He always said that desperate people do desperate things." "So what now, mija? What do you want to do about the house?" Mariana looked out the window of her father's office, her office now, at the mountains her father had loved so much. "I want to go home, Carlos. I want to fix the electrical work properly, repair any damage they did, and then I want to go home. And the business?" "The business continues. Martinez Construction has been building solid foundations for 20 years. That's not going to change." That evening, Mariana met Jessica for dinner at their favorite Mexican restaurant in downtown Denver. The news was playing on the television above the bar, and Mariana couldn't help but notice the stark difference between Patricia's polished media appearance from Monday and the mugshot that was now flashing across the screen. "I still can't believe she thought she could get away with it," Jessica said, raising her margarita in a toast. "To your father for being smarter than all of them." "To my father," Mariana agreed, "and to learning that sometimes the best revenge is just letting people hang themselves with their own rope." "So what's next? Are you going to contest the charges they filed against you?" Mariana shook her head. "Henderson says they don't have a case. The will is ironclad. All the inspections were legitimate. And now the police have evidence of their actual crimes. Patricia's attorney is apparently trying to negotiate a plea deal." "What kind of plea deal?" "Full restitution for the stolen items. Formal acknowledgement that the will is valid, and a promise to vacate the property permanently in exchange for reduced charges on the theft and fraud counts." Jessica's eyes widened. "They're going to give up their lawsuit?" "They never had a lawsuit. They had delusions and desperation, but not a legal case." "And the house?" Mariana smiled, the first genuinely happy expression she'd worn in weeks. "Carlos is having our electrical crew out there tomorrow morning. We should have the power back on by Friday, and I should be able to move back in this weekend." "How does it feel?" "Winning, I mean." Mariana considered the question seriously. "It doesn't feel like winning exactly. It feels like justice, like my father's wishes being respected, like the truth finally having its day." Her phone buzzed with a text from Amanda Chen. "Follow-up story airs tomorrow night. Thank you for trusting me with your story." Another text, this one from an unknown number. "Ms. Martinez, this is David Kim from the Denver Business Journal. We'd like to do a feature on women in construction and how you're planning to carry on your father's legacy. Would you be interested? And another from Carlos. The electrical work was even worse than we thought. Whoever did this, they could have burned the house down. Thank God we found it when we did. Mariana looked at the messages, then put her phone away and focused on her friend, her margarita, and the feeling of finally being able to breathe freely again. Tomorrow she would deal with reporters and contractors and the million details of running a business. This weekend she would move back into her childhood home and begin the process of making it truly hers. But tonight, she was going to celebrate the fact that sometimes, when you build your life on a foundation of truth and integrity, that foundation holds strong no matter how hard people try to tear it down. Friday morning dawned clear and cold, with the kind of brilliant blue sky that made the Rocky Mountains look close enough to touch. Mariana stood in the driveway of 1247 Maple Street, watching her electrical crew work to restore power to her childhood home. The yellow caution tape was gone, the red placard had been removed, and for the first time in over a week, the house felt like it belonged to her again. "The power should be back on within the hour," Carlos reported, approaching her with a clipboard full of inspection reports. "But Mija, you need to see what we found when we opened up the walls." He led her into the basement where the crew had exposed the electrical work that Kyle had attempted. Even to Mariana's trained eye, the mess was shocking. Wires were spliced with electrical tape instead of proper wire nuts. Circuit breakers were overloaded beyond their capacity. Most concerning of all, someone had bypassed the ground fault circuit interrupters in the bathroom area, a violation that could have been fatal. "This is attempted murder," Carlos said grimly. "Maybe not intentional, but this work was so bad that someone could have died." How long would it have taken for something to go wrong? With this kind of wiring? Could have been days, could have been months, but it would have gone wrong eventually. Fire, electrocution, something bad. Mariana felt sick. Her father had spent his final months in this house, weak from chemotherapy, unaware that his stepson's incompetence had turned his home into a death trap. "Fix it," she said. "Fix all of it. I don't care what it costs." Already on it. "We'll have everything up to code by Sunday." As Carlos headed back to supervise the work, Mariana's phone rang. Henderson's name appeared on the screen. "Good news," he said without preamble. "Patricia's attorney just called. They want to accept the plea deal." "All of it?" "Full restitution, formal acknowledgement of the will's validity, permanent waiver of any future claims against the estate, and they'll pay for all the electrical repairs. In exchange, the prosecutor will reduce the charges to misdemeanor theft and fraud." Mariana leaned against her father's workbench, breathing in the familiar scent of sawdust and motor oil. "What about the threatening messages?" "Those are being dropped as part of the deal, but there's a restraining order that prevents any of them from coming within 500 feet of you or the property. And if they violate the agreement, then all the original felony charges get filed, plus contempt of court." Patricia's attorney made it very clear to her that this is her one and only chance to avoid prison time. After hanging up, Mariana walked through the house room by room, seeing it with new eyes. In the living room, she noticed scuff marks on the hardwood floors where furniture had been dragged out. The kitchen had a stale smell, as if no one had bothered to clean out the refrigerator before the power was cut. Her father's study looked ransacked, with papers scattered and file cabinets left open. But underneath the damage and neglect, the house was still solid, still home. Her phone buzzed with a call from Amanda Chen. "Mariana, I wanted to give you a heads up. The follow-up story airs tonight, and we've got some interesting developments." "Such as?" "Well, it turns out Kyle Patterson posted a lot more than electrical work on his social media. We found videos of him and Derek going through your father's personal papers, joking about hitting the jackpot. There's also audio of Patricia on the phone with someone, discussing how to contest the will before it was even read." Mariana wasn't surprised, but hearing it confirmed was still jarring. They were planning this from the beginning. It gets worse. We interviewed several of your father's friends and neighbors. Apparently, Patricia had been telling people for months that she was worried about you taking advantage of your father's illness. She was building a narrative to discredit you long before he died. Projection, Mariana said. She was doing exactly what she accused me of. Exactly. The story airs at 6, and I think it's going to generate a lot of discussion. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared for the truth to come out completely. That evening, Mariana watched the follow-up story from Jessica's couch, surrounded by takeout Chinese food and a bottle of wine. The segment was devastating for Patricia and her children. The social media evidence was damning, but the interviews with Robert's friends and neighbors were even worse. Robert talked about Mariana constantly, said Jim Sullivan, her father's longtime friend and poker buddy. He was so proud of how she came home to help take care of him. He was worried about Patricia's kids, though. He said they looked at his house like they were appraising it. Another neighbor, Maria Santos, had even more damaging testimony. Patricia asked me several times about whether I thought Robert was mentally competent toward the end. She kept hinting that maybe he was making decisions he wouldn't normally make. I thought it was strange at the time, but now I understand what she was doing. The most powerful moment came when Amanda interviewed Dr. Patricia Hoffman, the oncologist who had treated Robert during his final months. Mr. Martinez was sharp as a tack right up until the end, Dr. Hoffman said. Cancer affected his body, not his mind. He was making complex decisions about his care, managing his business, and having detailed conversations about his family's future. There was never any question about his mental competency. By the time the segment ended, Mariana's phone was buzzing with messages of support from people she hadn't heard from in years. Former classmates, business contacts, even her ex-husband Marcus, who sent a simple message. I'm sorry for your loss. Your father was a good man, and he raised an amazing daughter. Saturday morning, Mariana woke early and drove to the house with a carload of cleaning supplies. The power was back on, the heat was working, and Carlos's crew had done an amazing job restoring the electrical system to proper working order. Now it was time to reclaim her home. She started in her father's study, carefully organizing the papers that had been scattered and filing away the business documents that Patricia's family had gone through so carelessly. In the bottom drawer of his desk, she found something that made her stop and catch her breath. A letter addressed to her, in her father's handwriting, dated just 2 weeks before his death. My dearest Mariana, it began. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I hope my will has been read and honored. I wanted to write you a letter that would be just between us, something Patricia and her children wouldn't see or know about. I need you to know that every decision I made about the estate was made with a clear mind and a full heart. You are my daughter, my legacy, and the person I trust most in this world. Patricia has been a good companion during my illness, but you are my blood, my future, and my pride. I suspect Patricia may not take my decisions well. She has become increasingly interested in the value of the house and business, and her children have been asking pointed questions about my plans. If they cause you trouble, remember that you have every legal right to everything I'm leaving you, and more importantly, you have the moral right. You earned it through 28 years of being the daughter any father would be proud of. Take care of the business, mija. Take care of the house. But most of all, take care of yourself. Build a life that makes you happy. Not just one that honors my memory. I love you more than words can say. Your proud father, Roberto. Mariana sat in his chair, tears streaming down her face, reading the letter over and over. Even in death, her father had found a way to support her, to validate her choices, to remind her that she was loved. She was still holding the letter when Carlos knocked on the study door. Mariana, there's someone here to see you. She looked up to see a woman in her 50s standing in the doorway, tall, elegant, with graying hair and kind eyes that looked familiar. I'm sorry to bother you, the woman said. I'm Elena Rodriguez, and I was your father's friend. We've been seeing each other for about 6 months. Mariana stared at her, confused. I don't understand. My father was married to Patricia. Elena's expression was sad, but not surprised. Patricia moved out of their bedroom 8 months ago. She told your father she couldn't handle the stress of his illness and needed space. Your father was essentially living as a single man, though he didn't want to upset you or complicate his medical care by making it official. Why are you telling me this? Because I was with him the night before he died. We were talking about you, about his will, about his hopes for your future. He asked me to give you something if anything happened to him. Elena reached into her purse and pulled out a small wooden box that Mariana recognized, her father's jewelry box, where he kept his watch, his wedding ring from her parents' marriage, and other precious items. He wanted you to have this, but he didn't want Patricia to know about it. He was worried she might try to claim it as part of the estate. Inside the box, Mariana found her father's watch, his original wedding ring, and a small diamond necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. But underneath the jewelry was something even more precious. A photo of her and her father from her college graduation, with a note on the back. My greatest achievement. Te amo, mija. There's something else, Elena said gently. Your father asked me to tell you that he was proud of how you handled yourself during his illness. He said you never made it about yourself. Never made him feel like a burden. And never stopped treating him like the strong man he wanted to be. That meant everything to him. Mariana looked at this woman who had brought her father comfort in his final months and felt grateful instead of hurt. Thank you, she said, for taking care of him, for bringing me this, for loving him. Elena smiled, and Mariana could see why her father had been drawn to her warmth and kindness. He was easy to love, and he was so proud of the woman you became. He used to say that his greatest success wasn't the business or the house. It was raising a daughter who had integrity. After Elena left, Mariana sat in the quiet house, surrounded by the mess left by Patricia's family, but also surrounded by the evidence of her father's love and trust. The letter, the jewelry, the will, the business, all of it pointed to the same truth. She had been chosen, trusted, and loved unconditionally. Sunday afternoon, she was packing the last of her belongings from Jessica's apartment when her phone rang. Patricia's name appeared on the screen, and Mariana hesitated before answering. Mariana. Patricia's voice was different, smaller, defeated. Patricia. I wanted to apologize. For everything. The things I said. The way we treated you. The mess we made of your father's house. Mariana waited, saying nothing. I know you probably don't believe me, but I did love your father. And I was scared. Scared of being alone. Scared of starting over at 52. Scared of not being able to take care of my kids. Fear doesn't excuse theft, Patricia. Or trying. To destroy my reputation. I know, and I'm ashamed. We're signing the papers tomorrow, and we'll be out of your life permanently. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. After a long pause, Mariana said, I hope you find what you're looking for, Patricia. But I hope you find it honestly. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Patricia said, Your father was right about you. You're stronger than all of us. Monday morning, Mariana signed the final papers at Henderson's office, officially taking full control of her inheritance. Patricia and her children signed their agreements, formally acknowledging her ownership and waiving any future claims. The yaoin. Stolen items were returned, the repairs were paid for, and the restraining orders were put in place. So what now? Henderson asked as they finished the paperwork. Now I go home, Mariana said. I run the business my father built. I take care of the house he loved, and I build a life he would be proud of. That evening, Mariana stood in the kitchen of 1247 Maple Street, cooking dinner in her own home for the first time in over a week. The electrical work was complete, the plumbing was fixed, and the house was officially, legally, and completely hers. She'd spent the day rearranging furniture, hanging family photos, and making the space feel like home again. In her father's study, she'd set up a small shrine with his photo, the letter he'd written her, and a candle that she planned to light every year on his birthday. As she sat down to eat, her phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. "The whole crew wants to know, what's the first project for the new boss?" Mariana smiled as she typed back, "There's a community center in 5 Points that needs a new roof. Pro bono work. Dad always said we should give back to the community that supported us." Carlos's response was immediate. "Your papa would be proud, Misha. When do we start?" Looking around the kitchen where she'd learned to cook from her father, where she'd done homework at the scarred wooden table, where she'd brought her first boyfriend to meet her dad, Mariana felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. Patricia and her children had tried to steal her legacy, but they'd failed to understand what that legacy really was. It wasn't just money or property. It was the values her father had instilled in her, the integrity he'd modeled, the strength he'd helped her build. They'd changed the locks, but they couldn't change who she was. They'd questioned her right to her inheritance, but they couldn't diminish her father's love. They'd tried to destroy her reputation, but the truth had been stronger than their lies. As she finished dinner and began planning her first week as the official owner of Martinez Construction, Mariana realized that her father's greatest gift hadn't been the business or the house. It had been raising her to be someone who couldn't be broken by greed, manipulation, or betrayal. Outside, the Denver lights twinkled against the backdrop of the Rocky Mountains, and Mariana Martinez was finally, truly home. The daughter who had been underestimated had proven herself worthy of her father's trust. The legacy was safe in her hands, and the future stretched ahead of her, solid and bright as the foundation her father had built beneath her feet. 6 months later, Martinez Construction had expanded its community outreach program, hired 3 new employees, and won a major city contract for affordable housing construction. Mariana had also started dating Dr. James Chen, Amanda's brother, whom she met at a charity event for cancer research. The house on Maple Street had been featured in Denver Home and Garden as a model of historic preservation and sustainable renovation. Patricia had moved to Phoenix to live with her sister, while Derek found work at an auto repair shop, and Kyle enrolled in trade school to learn electrical work, properly this time. Vanessa had started a lifestyle blog about authentic living, though she was careful never to mention the circumstances that had led to her newfound appreciation for honesty. The restraining orders remained in place, but they were no longer necessary. The Martinez family legacy was secure, not because of locks or legal documents, but because it had been built on love, trust, and the unshakable foundation of a father's pride in his daughter. And every Sunday evening, Mariana lit a candle in her father's study and told him about her week, about the business, about her life, and about how she was keeping the promise she'd made at his graveside, to be smart, patient, strategic, and worthy of the trust he'd placed in her. The locks had been changed, but the heart of the home and the strength of the daughter who inherited it remained unchanged.